Hi, I'm Justin,
Hi, I'm Andres.
and this is the Alt F1 channel.
So welcome to our second video. Hey, Justin.
Yes, exciting times. Get to
I know
get
this
to
is
this
the end
again.
of week 3 of lockdown where we are at. So I think we're going a bit stir crazy all over.
Yeah,
But yeah, let's at least we can talk some Formula One.
yes, and I heard there's also some good news within the Formula One where they're saying that maybe it will start at the end of May or in May. So obviously tracking the coronavirus.
Uh,
Great.
so I think the one article I read said they might focus on sometime in July, looking perhaps at the Red Bull Ring in Austria, because apparently the Austrian government is quite keen to get the Formula One there, and because the Red Bull Ring is a dedicated race ring, they could have a spectatorless, like a closed door event effectively. And basically what they might actually do is have 2 races in a row at the same track. So they were saying they might do 2 races at Austria and actually 3 races at Silverstone in the UK, which a lot of teams are keen on because so many of them are just down the road from Silverstone.
And that'll be good. At least we get to see something sometime this year, not completely blocked out and locked out till next year.
Well, I think they'll have to, because a lot of the teams won't survive financially if they don't get started. I think the smaller teams like Williams and Haas and those guys, if they don't get started soon, I think the FIA knows that they'll probably lose a few teams this year. So they'll need to get this show going pretty
Get the show
soon.
going, yeah. Getting the sponsors, getting some money so that they can keep up the racing.
I think they said somewhere, they mentioned how much money they lose per race, but I also saw a news article somewhere that said that Liberty Media, that owns Formula One, project to lose about $200 to $300 million this year just from Corona. I mean, that is a lot of money.
That is a lot of money. Jeez, I would not like to be in their shoes to have that off my bank account.
Do you think, so obviously, I don't know how familiar you are with some of the payment structures, but apparently they have to pay Ferrari something like $100 million a year just because they're Ferrari, because Ferrari is Ferrari and they bring so many fans.
Jeez,
So I was actually wondering if they might actually twist Ferrari's arm to forego that this year to keep Formula One kind of viable.
I was about to say, and I think Ferrari might actually have to do something like that because I think it's a bit rough, especially on Ferrari, to say, "Oh yes, I still want my 100 million. Thanks."
I know, and it's kind of like Zach Brown said: if 2 or 3 teams fold, then Formula One doesn't become viable anymore. And then actually, so if Ferrari doesn't come to the table and give up some of their cash, they might actually kill the race that, they won't have anybody to race against. So it's in their best interest to make sure that at least this year, they kind of come to the party and help out. Because, I mean, $100 million, if they give just even a little bit of that away to the smaller teams, that'll already help the smaller teams to survive.
Yeah, and I think it's important because, I mean, you want as much competition as possible. I mean, we want to still be entertained at the end of the day, I suppose, as well. And like you say, Ferrari still wants to keep putting cars on the track and hopefully keep racing.
But you know what was interesting about that Silverstone idea they had? They actually floated the idea of having one race the normal direction and then the following race the opposite direction. So whether they actually maybe do the one race the clockwise direction and the next race the anti-clockwise direction.
I think they'd have to
actually quite interesting.
Yeah, I think they'd have to do something like that. They'd have to keep it more competitive for both teams because in the case of Austria, it might give Max Verstappen a bit of an advantage, and then from the Silverstone, it might give Lewis Hamilton a bit of an advantage. So if you suddenly force them to go the opposite way around,
they can actually alter the Silverstone track a bit to have different layouts. So they could have the one layout the one weekend and another layout the next weekend. I didn't realize they're actually quite flexible in terms of the layout. Yeah.
Didn't know that they had that flexibility either. That's pretty cool.
So if you think about it, if they are able to do 2 races in Austria and 3 in the UK, That's really about 5 or 6 weeks in. So we're looking about September when the next races somewhere else might be.
Yeah.
So it might be an option, but I think they'll definitely have to go the closed door option. I don't think they can do crowds for most of the season.
Yeah, I don't mind the closed door. I think that it just at least if there's something to watch, I think it would be great. The closed door doesn't bug me too much as I'd like to go watch a Formula One. You know, we're stuck in South Africa, so either way, we're watching it on TV.
I would love some Formula One, but I think the closed door thing, the only thing that I haven't really mentioned is whether a closed door Grand Prix would be financially viable for the actual track. So, I mean, a track like Silverstone, those guys, actually, they make most of the money through ticket sales. So if there's nobody there, how do they make the money? Does the FIA or Liberty actually pay them a fee like they do with testing, where they actually rent the track from the track owners, and that's where the track owners don't lose money? Now, I would be quite interested to know whether it's financially actually viable to hold how many races they can hold behind closed doors.
Yeah. That's true. Hey, maybe we'll have to speak to good guy Ferrari again. Part of that money is to save the teams, and part of that money is to make sure that Silverstone and Red Bull Ring get some bucks.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting what happens. What I also think is whether Singapore will happen this year, because they were saying for Singapore to happen, they need to start construction of the track in May, because it's the street track.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think I heard Singapore is actually now quite hit hard by COVID-19 as well. Their numbers actually increased quite a bit. So I actually think that Singapore won't happen this year, which is quite unfortunate because it's one of my favorite races.
Yeah, I like the night racing at Singapore, and then I think Doha is also the night racing, which is pretty good.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's Bahrain is
Bahrain, sorry, yeah.
Night race.
Yeah.
No, I think it'll be quite sad, but at least I think it'll be great if we can at least some races. The question is just how many, because I think we discussed this before in terms of how many races do you actually need to constitute a championship, and I think the answer was something like 8.
8 races, yeah.
But is eight races really a fair reflection of a championship? Because if you think about it, Hamilton might crash out in race 2 and have bad luck race 3 and 4, and then suddenly because somebody had bad luck, they don't win the championship. Versus if it goes over 20 odd races, that evens out a bit.
Yeah.
So,
although in the same breath,
I would actually like to see more, like 10 or 12 at least.
Yeah, but in the same breath, it could make it quite exciting. It might give someone completely left field suddenly a chance to shine. So it could be interesting. It could be frustrating for some of the bigger teams, maybe.
Maybe. I think like Racing Point might actually be quite in a good position if they do, because they pretty much have the pink Mercedes.
Yep.
So if they are actually able to do really well, because remember, they'll probably do really well and then fade towards the end of the season if it was a normal season. But if it's a shortened season, the development doesn't come in as much anymore, and they have a pink Mercedes, they might actually finish really, really well versus where they might have ended in a normal season.
Yeah. Certainly, as you say, the new advances don't really come into play. What can you make with what you've got?
Because normally they will have to develop the car over the season, but obviously they don't have the same cash as the big teams. So I think everyone predicted they would do really well the first 5 or 6 races up until the Barcelona race, where everybody brings major updates.
Yep.
But that's pretty much out the door now. So yeah. I think that would definitely influence my fantasy league once we get back to racing.
To racing, yeah. And I think that would be good. Like I said, I think it would make it a lot more exciting and a completely different 2020 season to what we expected.
It would. Super exciting. I mean, it'll be basically a super series in the sense of sudden death, almost like a sudden death Formula One championship.
Who knows? Maybe McLaren might shine.
Maybe.
Norris is the next world champion.
So speaking of McLaren, let's talk about Sebastian Vettel, because I know Vettel has been linked with a potential move to McLaren, but I know you had some interesting thoughts on Bernie Ecclestone's
Mr. Ecclestone's Mr. Ecclestone's been in
Big Daddy Bernie.
Big Daddy Bernie's been in the news and talking up a storm. So I think he first started
What's
off
he
with
saying?
he first started off with Mr. Vettel saying Vettel should either quit Formula One or he should leave Ferrari, which is I think quite a statement to make. And then shortly after that, which I think kind of started putting things together in the the what would you call it, man.
The media?
No. So I'm trying to think of in your, conspiracy theory world. There we go. So in your conspiracy theory world, Bernie Ecclestone then started talking about how Mercedes should no longer make cars and should sell the team and focus on engines. And as you say, McLaren being the next Mercedes engine to be going, and Bernie Ecclestone telling Vettel to move over to McLaren. Maybe not. Maybe is Big Daddy Bernie been taking some payroll from McLaren?
maybe he owns some shares, which is
Yeah.
interesting because I saw that there was a whole thing about Toto Wolff maybe going to Racing Point, but because to come there or to become Aston Martin. And they kept denying it, but now I see he actually bought shares in Aston Martin, so he's going to own a portion, but he's still denying that he's going to become involved in it anyway. But I think where there's smoke, there's fire. So seems there's a lot of stuff happening in the background with power movers like Bernie and Toto going on. So they're buying shares all over the place and utterance words into the media.
Can you imagine that Toto Wolff at Racing Point would be quite interesting. Seems I've lost you, Mr. Andres.
Yeah, if you do you hear me now?
There we go. You're back.
Okay.
So
here's my question: if you were Toto Wolff, here's my question: if you are Toto Wolff and you take over Aston Martin as a Formula One team, right? Would you keep Lance Stroll as a driver?
Whoa, good question. Straight from the heart, I would say, sorry, Lance. I'd kick you to the curb. Thanks for playing. Who I'd put in his place would be a good question. I don't know who I'd try and steal from the younger drivers, someone who's up and coming, maybe. See if I could.
I think that's a good point. Who I would put in Lance Stroll's place is George Russell.
Yeah, I was actually just about to say the same
a good
thing.
Relationship.
Yeah,
because he has a good relationship with George, and George is good. I reckon George Russell is kind of that dark horse that everybody talks about, Lando Norris and Leclerc and those guys. But I reckon George Russell is going to be a world champion one day.
Quietly in the darkness, busy making his way up.
No, he's good. I rate him. I think he's good.
So there's our conspiracy theories for the week. Mr. Ecclestone on McLaren's payroll, and Toto Wolff on taking over Racing Point.
And so what does Mattia Binotto say about the whole Vettel thing? I mean, he said something about
poor Mr. Vettel must going to end up going crazy, I suppose, after this. So he's got Bernie Ecclestone telling him leave Formula One or leave Ferrari, and then he's got Mattia Binotto saying, "Oh, we love you, we love you, we appreciate you so much." so the poor guy's got to be going, what's going on?
So I've also read that Ferrari did offer Vettel a new deal at a reduced salary. So while Mattia Binotto seems to say the right things, they don't love him enough to give him a pay increase.
Yeah, sorry for you. We'll keep you, but at a less price. cheap discount.
So if you were Vettel, what would you do? Would you stay with Ferrari for less money? Would you go to McLaren?
That's a good question.
Would you maybe even go to Renault?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, because I think with Leclerc, I think proving himself last year, I think he did very well, came from nowhere. Suddenly he's up there in the ranks, and he outscored Vettel on numerous occasions, as well as with the qualifying. He was doing a lot better. So from my standpoint, I think if I were Vettel, I'd give Ferrari the slip and say thank you very much. Where I would go to would be a good question. I think with McLaren getting the Mercedes engine, they could start becoming a lot more competitive, and I think that would be a good thing if he can help build up McLaren. So between him and Lando, I think they make quite a formidable team. For Renault, obviously, I think they'd have to say cheers to Danny Rick. So Danny Rick would have to go to Ferrari, Mercedes. I don't know where he would step off to. So If I were Vettel, I don't think I'd go to Renault. I'd be more inclined towards the McLaren with the Mercedes engine coming in.
I think that's a valid point. I think if I were a Vettel, I would stay with Ferrari maybe another year, because I think they're perhaps probably his best chance for
what's left. what's left of it anymore. Yeah.
But I think you have a valid point. I think with the new regulations in 2022, McLaren might be a dark horse. I mean, they're a team on the rise. Him and Seidel, the team principal, know each other, so I think Seidel is very keen to get Vettel. The question is just, who does he replace? Does he replace Sainz? Does he replace Lando Norris? Because let's face it, both drivers have impressed a lot, and they've got a very good team dynamic. So if Vettel does go to McLaren, I think McLaren might. I don't know if it'd be the best thing for McLaren to take on Vettel, to be honest with you. Because while Vettel is a 4-time world champion, I still think they did the smart move by investing in youth when they went with Sainz and Norris, and I think they should stick with it. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think Vettel will stay with Ferrari for a year, next year at least, and then after that, who knows? I think he's going to see where his cars may fall, or he might just quit Formula One. I think he might listen to Big Daddy Bernie and just leave.
You think so? If I were Vettel, I wouldn't. I think he's still got a lot in him.
Where does he go?
Yeah, no, look, that is true.
I think where does he go? Because he doesn't have that many options. Ferrari, I think they're more and more banking on Leclerc. I think Mercedes is going to be always Hamilton's domain.
Yep.
And then that just leaves maybe Red Bull, but I think with Max Verstappen, that's going to be Max's team. So
yeah,
Vettel doesn't have a lot of options, and I think he wants to go to a team where he's number one and competitive, but I just don't know. It's kind of the Fernando Alonso scenario where he wants to have a team where he's number one and competitive, but there just aren't any teams that will offer that.
Yeah, exactly. Especially as you say, I think Max is pretty much dominating the Red Bull world, and I think he will for a while because he seems to be able to get out of that Red Bull car what not a lot of other people can. So I think he's starting to shape up there as well. And then, as you say, Lewis pulled Bottas is stuck at number 2. So yeah.
Well, I suppose it also depends on Hamilton when he retires. If Hamilton retires, that might be an opening for Vettel, but I think Hamilton still plans to be around for a while. So
yeah, I think it'll be a long
interesting
down the track before Hamilton decides to kick in the Formula One racing jacket / helmet.
Maybe, but he's 36 now, so he doesn't have a lot of years left.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe 2022. There might be something different. Who knows? Yep. I think 2022's crazy season might be interesting.
Yeah, with how this season's going, I think we're in for, well, provided we don't have Corona still till next year. I think we're in for quite a season next year.
Let's fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Cabin
fever. Those Chinese come up with a vaccine or something, man. Come on. For real.
Yep.
So in the words of James May, like, comment, subscribe at the bottom. Tell us your thoughts on Vettel. Tell us your thoughts on McLaren. What would you do if you were Vettel? Should he stay with Ferrari? Should he go? What should happen?
Yeah, everybody, like and subscribe. And thank you for your time. Thanks, guys, for spending time with us in this crazy lockdown period and lack of Formula One. But at least we've got news to report on.
Cool. Thanks, Justin. And remember, subscribe.
Subscribe, peeps.